Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now, Mike?
Yeah, it always works better when you're on the right side.
Oh, okay. Let me
Kind of
just.
caught it in a little LA traffic and
Okay, no
sorry.
problem. So we're talking about Israel, Iran.
Good.
What else would I talk about, right? I mean, I can't sleep. I'm upset. It's worrisome. It's frustrating. This is the kind of thing that, speaking as a Jew, I will say, I mean, that I have always, and most Jews also have always feared what happened. You always are worried that one day they're going to come in and annihilate Israel.
Right.
I remember in 1973, I was only a little kid at the time, the Yom Kippur War. I remember coming back from the synagogue and my mother coming out and saying, and while we were there, like hanging out, Israel is being invaded on three fronts. And I remember my heart sank. It was like, oh my God, this is it. And it was a horrible feeling. It was a sinking. You really felt like alone. It was like, they're just kind of, I mean, I have relatives there. I have a stake in the game, so-called. And I just am feeling that way now. Now, that doesn't mean that, I also have inside contacts in Israel, both somebody in the military and somebody in the government. And they've told me that Israel expected to launch this attack. They've been working on this for a decade. They know, the inside game there. They are partially doing it because Donald Trump is in the White House, and they know that in the case of Biden, first of all, he released billions of dollars to the Iranians by
1.8 billion in cash.
Yeah, and they immediately sent.
That was Obama.
Not only did they send that to Hamas to launch the October 7th attack, but I think they also were seeding foreign groups to attack Israel simultaneously, like as in on Harvard and Columbia. The whole thing was very coordinated. And then once the war was underway, Biden refused to release weaponry to the Israelis that they could be using now more effectively to do this job in Iran, but they don't have access to it, and it's not so easy to get it there. It's these things don't just happen overnight. But once Trump was in office, I think there was confidence that at least he would be lending kind of logistical support, which we are doing in terms of helping Israel fend off some of these missiles and whatnot. Now, should the United States get involved in a land war? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the way to go. I think that could trigger World War III.
Well, I don't think there's going to be a land war. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, I think that the government of Iran is extremely unpopular within its own country. I think if they get weakened, they're done. I mean, it's very, very hard to believe that the man in the street or the woman in the street is supporting this dictatorial regime. I think it's only going to take a few more surgical strikes. And if they have to kill the mullah, then so be it, But my question for you is, where does this put all these left-wing Jews now? Are they going to support Trump more?
Well, I want to talk about two things that you brought up. Firstly, I have seen the videos of Iranians egging Israel on, do this. I mean, women throwing away their burqas, and they're free. And, I saw the scene of people like in the subway system in Tehran celebrating and honking their horns and waving Israeli flags. Do this thing. We want to get rid of this rotten, oppressive regime. In the fog of war, I'm not sure I entirely even believe that. That could be, frankly, Israeli propaganda.
Could be.
I don't know. Um, are people really rising up in Iran? I know that Netanyahu has openly called for them to do it. I mean, he said, this is your chance to rise up and get rid of this rotten, oppressive regime. And it is a regime that's been an enemy of the United States since 1978, when the Ayatollah Khomeini took over, and they are deaf to America. I mean, they're not a friend of the United States, the great
No,
savior.
they haven't been for, as you say, nearly 50 years. So here again, Trump is doing what all these other presidents should have done.
Exactly.
Yet another mistake by Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, shafting the Shah of Iran.
Yeah.
When, in fact, he could have maybe applied quiet pressure to ask the Shah to do some reforms. I'm not saying he was perfect, but to do this, to really terrible, terrible blunder. And, look, I mean, I don't know if the Iranian people are going to really rise up or not. I hope they do, but whether they do or not, Israel's objectives are really ultimately limited to simply removing the nuclear threat and removing these ballistic missiles. And that is something that is worrisome. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. I don't know if they can do it on their own. They've done an extraordinary amount. I mean, it's almost miraculous what they've done. But yet, today, I'm reading about big missiles hitting Israel. So, I mean, it's just Israel has been having missiles fall on the country since October the 6th, and even before that. I mean, my daughter was in Israel before that, and she told me that there were missiles. I mean, there were air raids and people were, so this has been how they have fought Israel. Now, the last man standing, so to speak, is Iran. The other countries have made peace with Israel. Jordan, Egypt, the Abraham Accord countries, now even Syria.
Yeah.
So really, Iran is the last one that is gripped by this irrational hatred of Israel and this anti-Jewish idea that Israel can't exist. And this is it right now. This is the war that will end that threat, or it will end Israel, one or the other. It's that simple. Now,
but here's the thing. I don't believe that the Iran people are going to support any kind of war against Israel. I mean, you have a very unpopular regime. And what always has bothered me about this from day one is, if you go back to Old Testament times, if you go back to, early history, you're talking about the great Persian Empire that got distorted when the Arabs came in with Islam. I mean, let's be honest, okay? Here was one of the greatest civilizations, and King Cyrus was a great friend of the Jews back in the day.
No. I mean, Persia has always maintained friendly relations with Israel, even recently. I mean, the Shah of Iran, I mean, even before him, the government in place in 1948 was one of the first countries to recognize Israel. Wasn't necessarily best buddies, but the point is that, I mean, it was a relatively normal relationship until these mullahs took over, and they have committed themselves to destroying Israel for reasons that are as irrational as the whole rotten.
Well, they were aided and abetted, and I don't know if Carter was smart enough to come up with his insane policy. I think it was Brzezinski, but whatever. What a horrible mistake. And I'll tell you something. I have a feeling that he was given the opportunity to live to be so damn old, God having the hope that this miserable SOB would finally repent for all the terrible mistakes he made, never happened. Never happened.
He doubled down.
Yeah.
In the last utterances of his life, he's with this area. He's engrossed in Trump hatred, Trump derangement. I hope I live long enough to vote against Trump. I mean, it's just an empty shell of a man. I mean, it's there's not a shred of remorse, not a shred of repentance or self-awareness at all. So now you do have Trump actually standing up to the Iranians. Now that doesn't mean that he needs to. I am very concerned with the idea of America committing any kind of military action in Iran. I just think that if they do, not only could it engross this country into a world war, but it could end up resulting in the loss of American lives because Iran will strike back. You have American bases in Iraq and in Syria. You've got American ships off the coast in the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to be attacked and Americans will die. And to me, that is not tolerable. I just don't think we should do it for that reason. I think we can do everything but that.
That's right. You can take out so much of their strategic capability, and it should have been done. I mean, no one ever explained why Obama gave $1.8 billion in cash to Iran.
I mean, and Biden releasing all those funds, and remember John Kerry there meeting with them and playing footsie. You have these people, they just revere authoritarian regimes. I mean, it's a very strange thing. It's just like in the old days how the left was playing footsie with the Chinese communists and with North Vietnam. It's just this adoration of absolute power. I mean, you can't get a more authoritarian system than Iran. I mean, women have to walk around with these telephone booths. They look out through these slits, and yet feminists are supportive. I mean, you can't get a more oppressive society.
Well, I mean, the larger issue is the left has always been a bankrupt institution from day one.
Right.
And what is so funny about it in that sense is that there's no dissent from all their issues, right? If you're a leftist, you have to agree with 150% of all the official talking points.
Although I will say, because in answer to your second question, that when it comes to Israel, the Jews come together, even the leftist Jews. Everybody gets so everybody circles the wagons and they support Israel. Now that might have changed a little bit in recent years, where you have these keffiyeh-wearing leftist campus Jews. I mean, even
okay, but what about these Norman Finkelstein types?
Well, he's an outlier. That's always been there too. You have them in Israel too. I mean, it's a free country, it's a free society. So you've got these ultra extremist, right wing, fanatical religious Jews who are kissing up with the mullahs. They're going into Iran. So that's a given. Those people don't matter. That's fringe. I'm talking about the 98% of Jews on the left and the right who consolidate in times of war. I remember the last time when Israel was having a war, I was at my synagogue, which is a liberal synagogue, and standing there in the lobby was this guy that I happen to know who's way out on the left, handing out flyers to support Israel. And he said to me, "Hey, we're all on the same side now. This is war." So, when there's a war going on, I mean, people tend to coalesce. It was interesting. I mean, World War One. In Europe, there was all this thought that the socialists and the left in Germany and in Britain, they would not go along and they would stop these wars because they were seen as part of the nationalist movement. But they didn't. They got on board with Germany. They got on board with Britain. They became patriotic to their own countries, and they put aside their leftism in times of war and in times of crisis. Once the war's over, everybody goes back to normal. So that's what's going on right now with the American left, Jewish left. They're on board. Israel's being attacked. They want to, they live in Israel too. They've got sons and daughters who are in the Israeli army. I mean, who is that leftist rabbi who ran Tikkun Olam, the ultra leftist, progressive, atheist newspaper? His son was in the IDF. He's like, hey, I have skin in the game here. I don't want to see Israel defeated. So, that's what's going on with the American Jewish left right now. Everyone is solid. There's concern. All of a sudden, people are waking up and realizing that under the Biden regime, 20 million undocumented people flooded into this country. We don't know who they are. And
okay, but it's funny how you put that. Now they're waking up and seeing that.
Yeah, because now it's hitting home. Because if we go to war and we attack Iran, you don't know what kind of trigger Iran is going to pull. You could all have, suddenly you can have New York, people getting bombed. So, and that's just a fact. That's, I'm just saying there could be major consequences if the United States gets involved. That doesn't mean we shouldn't get involved. Yeah. But if we do, we better do it with pretty open eyes. And I would hope that if we do, and the one thing that I think President Trump can be relied on is that he really likes to win. He doesn't want to be involved in a quagmire, like the Iraq War, which was a disaster, or Afghanistan. If he does it, there has to be some assurance that you're going to go in, do the thing, and do it heavy, and then get the hell out, and it's done, because it was done so convincingly. So under those circumstances, I say let it go. I mean, but
as long as you handle it correctly, I mean, you can go back to World War II for God's sake. We didn't really win that.
No, that's right. That was a quagmire. It went on for 5 years, and it cost 100,000 American lives. So no, that's what I'm afraid of. I think, but with Trump, it doesn't work that way.
No,
he understands this liberal establishment, perpetual war agenda of people like, I don't know, Lindsey Graham comes to mind. That's not the way Trump wants to run it. I think that I believe if he is who I think he is, and if he is who he's always appeared to me to be, he's not going to let that happen. He's going to go in with a very precise campaign that's going to have a beginning, middle, and end. It'll happen and it'll be over. That would be the only condition by which I think the United States can get involved.
I would agree, and he's the guy to do it that way.
Exactly.
You can look at all these other stupid conflicts that were never resolved, Korea, Vietnam, and so on.
Right.
Because it was this political establishment type approach. Nothing ever gets resolved. And that's the whole purpose of big government. Nothing ever does get resolved. Because if it does, then by God, what are you going to do with these agencies?
We don't need them anymore. Just like the USAID and all these other groups, they've solved the problem. That's part of what bureaucracy is all about. I mean, they're perpetuating this enormous, authoritarian agenda, if you will, the kings, to use their phrase. I mean, which is a great case of psychological projection.
Let me ask you this. Why doesn't the average guy see it like this? Are they so imbued with this, quote, patriotic nonsense that they just get all fired up in the hoopla and don't see what's really going on?
Maybe it's that everything has become so ideological, but I think that, in the case of Israel, they do understand it because Israel can't afford to have a war of attrition. So they have, and I hope they stick with this idea. Their philosophy since day one in terms of dealing with their enemies has been that we're going to find the specific people who are doing this to us, and we're going to stop them. And we're going to do it in a pinprick, and it could take 100 years, it could take 1,000 years. We're not going to, we're going to just methodically go after them. And that seems to be what they're doing in Iran. Now, sure, they'd love to see a regime change, why not? But we all would like to see that. But ultimately, their goal simply is to debilitate Iran's nuclear threat and missile threat. And that's the job they're trying to do. They have to do it. Beyond that, everything else is like, extra. It's sort of like found money. It's
Extra
extra.
bonus.
Yeah.
But even within Israel, the founders, Ben Gurion and company, their approach was let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and that didn't work out too well.
No, they suppressed the real, the people like Begin and the Agun who actually wanted to, really take sovereignty in Israel. And I think that in the case of the founders, the liberal, secular founders of Israel and the Jewish people in general, there's a ghetto mentality that has never left. It's kind of like you're a guest in someone else's home. You're not the majority. You don't have any control over the actual government, over the army, over the big institutions. And so you have to kind of play second fiddle, and you have to be nice, and you have to kind of play ball in order to get by. And there's a certain compromise in that position. And I think that ghetto mentality, as it were, has pervaded in Israel, even though Israel has achieved sovereignty.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the biblical aphorism, which is that it took 40 years after liberation from Egypt of wandering in the desert before the children of Israel were able to then cross the river and go into the promised land, because they still had a slave mentality. It took a generation or two to kind of let go of enough of that.
Well, that's a good analogy, and it repeated itself with the Maccabees, right? That they had to go to war against their own people to get rid of the faint-hearted ones.
Yeah, it was a civil war. Exactly. And that even happened at the founding of Israel when, Begin was heading up the ship with weaponry. They wanted to blast their way to Jerusalem. They were going to go, and they were met on the shore by left-wing Jewish forces who were firing at them and blew the ship up. One of the leaders of that force was Yitzhak Rabin. So, it's kind of like a civil war going on there. And this was during the War of Independence, at a time when you'd think that everybody would kind of be, united in terms of fighting this enemy. And they really only were partially successful in that they did not push the Jordanians out of what they call now the West Bank, what's Judea and Samaria. And that was a big mistake. At the time, they could have finished the job and gained sovereignty for Israel. And so Israel's
there's a good historical analogy, unfortunately, with the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, Wolf and Montcalm. What Wolf should have done is say, look, we've taken over. You're going to speak English now.
But instead, he compromised and he was shot. He was killed. So yeah, people lose their nerve. I don't know if it's whatever the mentality is. If you have a clear understanding of your task and of your mission, you can get it done. And it's taken Israel a long time to get there, but I think they're there now.
Well, I hope so. There has to be a winner at some point,
Yeah, and I think that obviously I and I'm sure many people are hoping and praying for the day when these rotten mullahs are sent off to Russia or somewhere in exile, and that a more moderate government comes in. Of course, the danger is that they might end up with a government that's even worse. I don't know, but that's not likely. I think that when you have such an oppressive regime collapse, it's usually only for the better. And I hope that happens. Let the mullahs go to settle in Moscow or Beijing or wherever.
Well, and there's bad history there. The mullahs were heavily supported by the Brits, all right, as part of the politics they thought to achieve some oil deal. So I mean, there's been corruption all the way down the
And, and,
line.
mis- and mistakes have been made. I mean, the United States made a mistake when Eisenhower listened to Winston Churchill, who he looked up to as a father figure, and he shouldn't have. And Churchill, who said that British petroleum has just been nationalized by Mossadegh in 1954, we have to stop this. We have to go in and take him out. And so Eisenhower went along with it, and you had the CIA working with MI5 go in and foment a campaign against Mossadegh and take him out. And ever since then, the Iranians had great resentment because you had the Shah of Iran at the time. He was a younger man. He was kind of a figurehead. He assumed dictatorial powers, and that created a situation which eventually led to a radical revolution. Probably if Mossadegh had been left in place, if he had nationalized their oil, which he should have done anyway, Iran would have been a powerful, peaceful country, more likely. It was always sort of, secular in the real progressive sense. Going even back to before the Ottoman times, Iran was always, it was never on board with the kind of the darker side of Islam. It was one of the first countries to have a constitution.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Churchill because a rational discourse on Churchill could list a ton of bad mistakes.
Oh, he was going back to the Boer Wars,
Yeah.
where the British spent all that time defeating the Dutch Boers and putting them in concentration camps. It's crazy. I mean, the Dardanelles campaign, which
How is he such a revered figure?
he's scoundrelous. I mean, when you look at the background, but he had that kind of influence. It's interesting. As a whole, I mean, Pat Buchanan wrote a really good book about Churchill. I read it years ago. I can't recall it now, but there's oftentimes you have these people who are held up as reverential, almost like deities, and you look at who they actually were. I mean, Mahatma Gandhi is another one. Yeah, Albert Einstein. What did he do? He stole most of the thesis from his wife, and then he divorces her for a young woman. I mean, not exactly a sterling character. Anyway, you just have these.
People like to read this fanciful history, but the lesson you need to know about history is it deals with real people. So once you create these saintly individuals, the irony being, as a Catholic, I will tell you that saints were not perfect. That's just not how the human experience. So you can go ahead and list the faults of people, but somehow they have to set up these, if you will, secular saints, and you start looking into virtually any of them, and you don't like what you see.
No, but I mean, some of them, they're so vaunted and sainted, and some of the stuff they were involved in was so egregious. I mean, Martin Luther King, not to mention a name. All right, I mean, these people are propped up as giants, and it's
George Floyd.
Well, that was a complete fabrication. Anyways, yeah, I mean, they're totems, they're symbols.
But everybody seems to go along with it, and of course, the latest one is your good buddy Tony Fauci.
Oh my God, the worst. Yeah. Worse than Mengele, as you said in your famous blog Substack.
That is my most viewed article.
Yes.
And my only regret is I should have been more harsh than I was. But the other one,
I think I mentioned that he spoke at this Boston speakers group, which is very left wing. Anybody who it was involved with the 2020 election steal was invited, and he was charging like thousands of dollars a ticket to see him, and he probably put it all in his pocket. I mean, it was just disgusting. Anyway,
it's.
I would have loved to get to that one.
Yeah, I don't understand it, but people seem to want to have some royalty figure, whether it's movie stars or whatever the hell it is, And it's just this irrational lifting up of these individuals, and they just don't want to know any of the negative, of which
I
there's
think
always plenty.
Boston is particularly prone to this. You know, we have this Mayor Michelle Wu. She recently, and then this sounds like a local issue, and I'm only bringing it up because it typifies her entire approach. The city of Boston is rehabilitating what's called this White Stadium in Franklin Park.
Right.
It's an old stadium that had gone into decay, and the budget for that was about $5 million. Now it turns out that somebody leaked out of the city hall that it's actually costing $175 million.
Well, they got the five right.
Yeah, right. Thank you. And her response to this was that to bring this up is disrespectful. Implication being, I mean, she's playing the same card Obama played.
Yeah.
You know, if you criticized Obama, it's because you have something against black people, so you better shut up. She's implying because she's Asian that you can't criticize her. And then she turns around and she blames Trump. Why did she blame Trump? Because it was the tariffs. You can imagine how idiotic that is.
There are people that buy into that.
I don't even think liberals. I mean, the Boston Globe isn't even touching it. Even liberals are going to look at that like, really? What is there a tariff on concrete? I mean, what the hell is she talking about?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, nobody's actually taking the time to look at who's getting that money, and why that's happened. I mean, it's very corrupt. And but she's one of these people that seems to coast by as like this totemic figure. You know, I mean, it's just and Boston is particularly vulnerable. The left. We have this Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley.
About the bald chick.
The baldy, yeah. Talk about left wing. I mean, she and two other Congresspeople, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, voted to put a bill before Congress to sever all relations with Israel, cut off all aid to Israel, and have Israel declared a terrorist entity.
Right.
It only got 3 votes in Congress. Those 3. Even the liberal Democrats were like, no, thank you. But yet she gets away with that. You know, she doesn't, nobody questions it.
Well, there is this thing that goes on. And now at this point, you have to be female. And you have to be a minority.
Minority, yeah.
Somehow you're above any criticism. But the good news is that's starting to wear out.
I really hope so in Massachusetts, because this state, recent statistics show that the state is failing. The economy is sinking. The population is sinking. The rents and the mortgages are going up.
Yeah.
The whole atmosphere is going down. I mean, in every metric. And I think people are starting to feel it here, and that is going to make a difference. I don't know if it's going to be enough to crack open this rotten establishment. I know that Michelle Wu has a pretty good opponent in Josh Kraft, as I mentioned. I mean, not that he's any great shakes, but you know, at least he's he said when he was asked, "Are you going to support Trump?" He goes, "I'll support whatever works for Boston. I don't care if it's from Trump or whoever. Yeah, it's not that I like Trump. I just want to do what's best for my city." I think that's a pretty good answer, and I think that plus he's the son of Bob Kraft, the Patriots owner, and he's very
well. I mean, you're singing in L.A. I mean, full disclosure, I don't live in L.A. proper, but you see this ridiculously incompetent Karen Bass, who
even worse. She's part of a terrorist group in the 70s that actually put a bomb in the U.S. Capitol building.
She's a mess. She only got where she did because, and this seems to be the qualification. You don't just have to be a black lesbian. You have to be an ugly black lesbian. So now you're checking off all the boxes.
Although, didn't she have to get rid of that one? The one that had of the fire, right?
Well, right, but that was a lesbian cat fight, so it's fun to watch.
Okay.
Seriously, but no, the LA Fire Department for at least 30 years has been a joke with that kind of stuff. We used to do a lot of business with that agency. And I knew guys, white guys, heterosexual, who were stuck at the captain level for their entire career. Right?
Yeah.
They take the chief's exam multiple times, get high scores, but then some minority, and especially if you're a homosexual, you get extra points.
Right.
So they were just locked out of these jobs. And based on the attrition, that's how you get someone like the recently fired chief engineer, who was not competent, but she checked off the boxes of being an angry lesbian. Now she was white, so
She checked off enough of them.
and the LA Times today celebrated the life, and this is where, because I know the inside dope on this, the celebrated first LA Fire Department captain who was transgender. All right. So for those keeping score at home, the fact that she was only able to get up to captain means she had to be really incompetent. With all those, plus points going for her. I mean, the average person didn't realize that, but I'm telling you, I could see it deteriorate.
Now, I'm not saying that this is true. I'm saying that my information on this is from a person that I trust, who's a liberal, but who told me that the Pentagon is getting rid of all of their transgender officers. And she told me that this is a mistake because these transgender officers, for whatever reason, happen to be very good at technical computer things. And that they're actually very conservative. They tend to be right-wing, even though they're transgendered. And that to do this is not a good idea. I don't know if that's true or not, but
it's an issue. To me, it sounds too pat.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can make that statement.
I don't know. But at the same time, if they are that good at what they're doing and they happen to be transgender, I don't know if I care that much. I want to have somebody in there who's competent and who can do it, especially in these times when the Defense Department is dealing with some real crisis. I mean, if they just get rid of them, they all have to leave by a certain date. Do they have people that are going to step up and be able to replace them that quickly? I mean,
you have to look at it from this point of view.
Yeah.
They may well all be security risks. With all
but they're already out of the closet. It's not like the old days when somebody could be blackmailed. I mean, they are transgendered and openly so. So I don't think it's a security risk.
I would have a hard time believing that they got the job based on merit alone.
I know what you mean, yeah. I'm just tossing this out there because, I hear all points of view, and this was brought home to me, as I say, by somebody whom I'm close to and who asked me what I thought of this. So I don't know. My answer is I don't know. But I want the best in the military.
Well, I would say this, that if you're transgender, there's a pretty good chance you got some mental issues. And
but I mean, if they're very good at a particular function, I don't really care. I mean, it's personal. Yes, I mean, the Defense Department says it's costing us $58 million on surgeries and on psychiatric care. I mean, that's bad. Maybe, but then on the other hand, this person tells me people join the military for a lot of reasons where they get benefits. That's nothing new. So I don't know. It's complicated.
Well, that sort of harkens back to, you may remember a movie from a long time ago, 50 years ago, actually, called The Eiger Sanction, with Clint Eastwood. No. And it had to do with, he was a hired killer for the government. But the point was that his contact at this agency that was ordering these sanctions or hits was some comical figure who had some ridiculous medical condition where he had to have transfusions all the time and had to live in the dark, and he was an ex-Nazi, all right? But somehow he was so great
Right.
that we had to do this. So forgive me if I'm a little skeptical with this.
No, I know. I mean, I saw a scene with Clint Eastwood doing. I mean, sometimes on TikTok, you look at little scenes where he's a detective, and they just put this woman in charge. This is during the early times when women were just
Oh,
coming
it's
in.
one of the Dirty Harry movies, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, and your background, have you ever shot a gun? Have you ever? No. Have you ever been a patrol person? No. You know, he asked her a bunch of questions, and here you are, you know, telling me, and here you are, like, you know, what is exactly is going on here? What are your qualifications? And it's a great scene. I mean, he really lays it out. It's like, really? And this is a situation where we're putting our lives on the line, and you're sitting here in some office dressed all pretty and looking like some, you know, it's like, what the hell? Anyway.
Well, I mean, you're checking off boxes,
Right.
and I think that this argument that you heard from your friend, it may be one of sort of these after the fact things. That, okay, you put these trainees in to whatever job, and you find, well, this guy is good at so and so. Okay, but is that because he's transgender, or did you cherry pick?
Also, a lot of them, I'm sure you've seen the pictures of them at very high levels, you know, like generals, and you see these guys wearing skirts, and they have, you know, the fruit salad on their lapels, and they're like, I mean, and there's more than a couple like that.
No, it's very disheartening, and it's not worth it, and it gives a bad impression. So
I generally
it's
agree.
kind of like it's the same argument with boys and girls sports. All right.
Yeah. Well, that one.
Speak as a transgender, we'll create a transgender league for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, that one is more obvious. I mean, you have people, you know, girls are getting hurt. I mean, that's, you know, I mean, it's ridiculous. This team, where was it? Where they put this guy up there and they won all the awards.
Yeah.
They didn't care. They just wanted to win. It's like having a ringer, you know, it's except this is a guy. I mean, it's totally unfair, obviously. And there was a lot of controversy around it. I hope that fad is something that it's insane, and it's.
Well, you know, here's the problem. I was aware of this. Well, first of all, the transgender thing was an outgrowth, unfortunately, of lesbians dominating women's sports. Let's be honest. That's where it came from. All right. So.
Yeah, but why would lesbians want them?
Because they feel joined at the hip with this sort of thing.
I mean, Martina Navratilova come out against it. I mean,
LGBTQ, right?
No, I get it. Okay.
All right. So this had been going on for a long, long time, to the point now that you have the ridiculous situation of the WNBA, which is completely subsidized by the NBA, has not made money ever in 40 years, right? Because nobody, let's be honest, wants to watch lesbian summer camp. Now, when they got Caitlin Clark in there, the viewership went up. All right. So what did they do? All the rest of the women attack her.
Hitting her, yeah.
Yeah.
Here she is. She's a straight girl. She's good looking. She's smart. She's everything they despise.
Yeah. And the league is never going to make money because nobody wants to watch that. And this is now how it got out of hand. This is now how you have these generals in dresses, as you say, wearing all the medals and so on. It's always the same thing. They always start off We just want to be accepted. And then it escalates. So you just have to not allow it. Because
And then you see, I'm sure you've seen a couple of clips of this, but you see congressional hearings with Pete Hegseth.
yeah.
Now, I don't know. I mean, I have mixed feelings about Pete Hegseth, but the women, the left-wing women, absolutely go out of their minds at his mere presence. Their heads explode. You see Elizabeth Warren, I mean, they become red as a beet. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just something about him that sets them, that triggers them like crazy. And I'm trying to think about what exactly is that.
Well, I'll tell you what it is, that he's actually a real man.
That's what I suspect. He's
And
an
they
alpha man,
prefer dealing with these gelded individuals, right?
Oh, they're going berserk over him, and they're losing their minds. And he's there, very cool. He's like, answering. And then they ask, yes or no, this kind of stuff. And he goes in and he does his thing. He's gotten much better. He's really improved. I think he's growing with the job. But they absolutely have a meltdown.
Yeah, well, he's kept his cool pretty well. I mean,
Yeah.
One that would drive me crazy if I were being questioned, and I hear these ninnies saying, "Clean me my time, clean me my time, clean me." I would just mock them.
I know. I can't imagine how cool he's been under these, and this shrill quality. I mean,
That's all they.
and it's really him, because the other people, it's not like that. There's something about him that drives them absolutely.
Yeah, it triggers them, because this is the old Hillary Clinton idea. All right, she was able to become the valedictorian at Wellesley,
right,
because she just had a big bad attitude, and all the gelded professors there were afraid to talk back. People never realized the only accomplishment she ever did in her entire life was marrying Bill Clinton. All right, that's it. That's her whole resume. All right, what has she ever accomplished? Not a goddamn thing. She's gotten a bunch of big titles. All right, so now on a lower level, you got a Liz Warren. What did she ever do? She lied and complained she was an Indian. So she got all these affirmative action jobs, going from Rutgers Law School somehow to Harvard. That's a big jump, right?
where she's listed as in the woman of color directory, and where she actually had a recipe in the Pow Wow cookbook.
Yeah. So it's completely phony.
Completely.
So now a guy's coming in who, instead of being some bureaucrat, or you're my favorite guy, Robert McNamara, Secretary of Defense, all right?
Yeah.
Now you have a guy that's actually been a war fighter. They don't like him because he's a real guy, all right? And their heads just explode, and it's fun to watch.
It's
I
crazy.
don't know why all these liberal women have to be angry all the time.
I've seen it in my own life, and I know it's the Karenization of women. It all kind of came out in the open during COVID.
Yeah.
They
completely
embraced the whole lifestyle of COVID lockdown to an extreme degree, and since then it's been on display. Anyway, so I just hope and pray that this Israel-Iran thing ends quickly and decisively.
I think it will.
Yeah,
I think it will, because you got the right guy as the president.
I agree.
And there's not a whole lot of sympathy for Iran. Okay.
Well, yeah, but there's also help from China, North Korea, Russia. I'm just saying.
Until, to use the expression that you hate, they realize they don't want to be on the wrong side of history. And they'll drop Iran so fast, make your head spin. I think.
There is a psychological element to it, in that if Iran appears to be losing, then but the point is that they're not there yet. I mean, they're still, they're not going away so quickly, and these people are very tough, and they don't care about life so much. You know, they can endure terrible hardship to
Well,
survive.
right, but I'll tell you what, it left a mark. Okay, the second in command guy to Khomeini, he was killed, and then he was replaced. And 4 days later, that guy was killed.
Right.
So it's going to be
Yeah,
harder.
they'll just keep replacing them. It's like coming up out of the ground. You know that game where you hit the head and another one pops out at the amusement park? I forget what it was called.
Whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole, exactly. Another one's going to pop out of a hole, and they're just tough as hell. I mean, they're resilient. They believe that if they're killed, they get 70 virgins in heaven. I mean, you know, they're not going to. They don't care. It's worrisome. I mean, this is a radical ideology and faith. I'm not saying that all Muslims believe this, but a radical element does. And yet, at the same time, it was very heartening to see how fast Bashar Assad collapsed. Nobody thought that would happen. All of a sudden, it looked
doesn't
like,
take much.
yeah, I mean, a couple of people moved in from one
I
city.
don't as an aside, would you really want to deal with 70 virgins? I mean, what's the attraction? Explain it to me.
Exactly. It's like the joke of this man goes to his priest and he says, I have this great desire to live forever. And the priest says, well, then go out and get married. That's why. Will I live forever if I get married? No, but you'll lose the desire. Anyways.
All
But
right.
On that note, what's happening on the Substack?
Well, we took a little break. You know, we've been kind of busy with some stuff, and I hope to get back. I've got a couple of more ideas for some pieces, and it's going to be here's the sneak preview: attacking journalists. I mean, I think the basic problem with journalism is that it self-selects. Okay, you cannot get leftists out of it because that's the only person who wants to be it. You know, it's like looking for a straight interior designer. It's just not there. All right.
Exactly. It's sort of like Greeks going into the business of pizza parlors. I don't know. It's like or having a white guy as your waiter in a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
that's what they do.
And if the LA Times, you know, with these riots and attacks on ICE, the writing has been so absurd, it becomes amusing. How come the LA Dodgers don't rise up and attack ICE? Because there's all these immigrants, and they're conflating legal and illegal. And then someone was comparing Juneteenth to the fight against the ICE raids. I have no idea how
it's not working for them. I mean, there was just a poll taken, a very big poll with a huge sampling, showing that the majority of Americans still support deportation, and that the deportation is happening naturally. People are leaving. Yeah. I don't know what the numbers are, but and I think you made the point to me quite well that deporting like that woman at Tufts, it does set an example of a chilling example that basically leads to people leaving, or they realize that this is they're playing ball here. This is tough. I mean, they're going to go. And
what happened at the vaunted University of Michigan? The Chinese researchers that brought in biohazards.
Yes.
Now, the universities have failed so dramatically. And I'll tell you, one of my customers said that a whole part of their business has slowed down because it's all based on research grants from academia.
Right.
And I said, look, I wrote an article a number of years ago analyzing NIH grants, looking at the very top money and the little grants, and it was astonishing how useless.
It's completely gone off the rails. I mean, I mean, I had this talk with someone who was telling me this as well. Oh, this country's gonna go downhill because we're not investing in science. No, it's like, these are people who love regulation and they love big government. How about regulating some of these grants? How about which is what they're doing? How about a deep dive into exactly who's getting this money and what it's funding? That's all this is. They're going to take excess and corruption and really bad. I mean, sticking marbles up the backsides of cats. I mean, what if that was $10 million? They're going to stop this. This is, it's wasteful. It's corrupt. And but what they do is, like, Harvard will come out, oh, we're going to have to cut, and they list a couple of programs that are good programs. When that's a bunch of bullcrap, because they could cut a couple of bad, they're like, it's kind of like a tactic, and I don't think it's working for them. Yeah. Everyone sees through that.
Yeah, they're going to the well too many times. But anyway, I hope they have something up there.
Good.
And it's, what can I say? I guess I'm glad I'm busy with other stuff. But and this is why I don't charge for the Substack, because if I did, I'd have to write something all the time. And
it becomes a gig. Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't take the pressure. And I mean, how much money are you going to make on it anyway? Charge somebody what, $5 a month?
No,
I mean, billion subscribers could have.
People who make money, and I think it's great, they already have like a big following, and they can, like I know Dan Rather comes to mind. He makes money from his Substack because that's his main outlet. So he's got an audience.
I would sign up for him in a minute.
I mean, for better or for worse, in his case, worse, but nevertheless, right. That's who makes money on Substack.
So what about you? You got a new book? What's going on with that?
My book is social theory, and I'm using papers I'm writing in my classes at ASU, where I'm getting a degree in sociology, and it's all right now. My class is social theories, modern social theories. Michael Foucault is interesting, but every one of them is a left-wing Marxist theory. Now I have to do queer theory. I mean, I was hoping to avoid that one, but I can see that it's a big part of social theory today and socialism. So I'll have to.
I don't know how you do it. I mean, how do you hold your nose and?
I'll do a chapter on it, but it's not going to be a nice chapter. It'll be a critical chapter. I'll use critical race theory, except it'll be critical conservative theory anyway. So right. I'll talk to you next week, and
right. Sounds good.
Keeping on. God bless America. May